Let's see. So the next presentation is going to be from Beate Peter from our own Arizona State University College of Health Solutions. And she will be presenting on Babble Bootcamp, a clinical trial of proactive intervention for infants at genetic risk for speech and language disorders. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question real quick?
Sure.
I had 3 files in that online folder, and the third one was the correct one. It's 10 minutes long. Oh yeah, I see it's the correct one. Okay, just making sure. Thank you. Hello, my name is Beate Peter, and on behalf of my many wonderful colleagues, I'm excited to share with you today about the Babble Bootcamp clinical trial of a proactive intervention for infants at genetic risk for speech and language disorders. You see, the problem is many children have trouble learning to talk. This could be a speech sound disorder, which is difficulty making the speech sounds of the language in order to be understood clearly, or it could be a developmental language disorder, which may involve trouble learning the meanings of words, trouble understanding what others say, and especially trouble using words and sentences to express their thoughts. These disorders have a genetic cause, but we don't fully understand yet how this works. And we can't diagnose these disorders until children are old enough to show us that they struggle with speech and language, not before 2 or 3 years. And treatment cannot start until the diagnosis is made. Not being able to communicate is very frustrating for the child and the family and others. Treatment can be long and costly. If only we could predict at birth whether a child is at risk or not, then perhaps we could develop proactive interventions for them. The current status is wait until you see signs of speech and language problems, and we can observe sparse babbling, we can observe delayed onset of first words, but we can't really assess and treat until the children are between 2 and 3 years old. In the dream world, imagine that we could predict at birth which child will have these troubles and work with them when they're long before they start producing words. If we could just work with them when they're babbling, cooing, when they're learning their first words, wouldn't that be awesome? The proof of concept that we chose is classic galactosemia. This is a metabolic disease that comes with a high risk for speech and language disorders. And here's the culprit, the GALT gene on chromosome 9. Typically, the GALT gene produces an enzyme that splits galactose into its constituent parts so that we can use it for energy. Individuals with classic galactosemia do not have this enzyme because they do not have a working copy of the GALT gene. And as a result, galactose cannot be split into its components. And the result is galactose in the blood, which is toxic. Classic galactosemia is diagnosed via newborn screening, which is why we chose it. We can know whether a child has classic galactosemia right at birth. Children are treated with a lactose-restricted diet, but still, even though they are on this diet, they have a high risk for severe speech and language disorders, for cognitive delays, for fine and gross motor disorders, and many other health impairments. Well, you might think, since we know that these children are at risk for these speech and language disorders, and we know this at birth, does this translate into a very, very early assessment and intervention? The answer is not really. Usually it is business as usual with these children. And according to our Facebook survey, we find that these children get assessed and treated about the same age as children who are speech and language impaired, but do not have classic galactosemia. And of interest, the families that we surveyed, only 5 of 22 infants had typical babble behaviors. That's very important to note. So we asked ourselves, well, if babies with classic galactosemia tend not to vocalize or babble much, well, will teaching them to babble help their speech development later on? First, words and sentences appear late and are underdeveloped. Well, will attention to words and sentences help communication outcomes in the long run? And besides the risk for speech and language disorders, there's a risk for cognitive delays. Well, will a focus on language actually translate into better cognitive outcomes? So our treatment is delivered via telehealth. A speech language pathologist works with the parents to teach them how to elicit and stimulate coo and babble increase consonant and vowel inventory, elicit first words on time, shape early sentences, and use language to convey meaning. Here's our speech pathologist teaching a little baby how to say ba, ba, ba. It's precious. The active phase is from infant age 2 months to 24 months, which is earlier than most children would even qualify for assessment and treatment. And we do follow-up assessments at 2, 3, and 4 years. Here's an example of a mother and her little daughter with classic galactosemia involved in a little conversation. Watch this.
What were you saying? Ba, 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 ba. Are you saying a ba, 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 ba? Yes.
This is amazing. This is just a poster child example of what we teach the parents. Have a conversation, model for them, and have them respond to you. Who's in our study? We have 4 groups, each with 25 infants. One group is infants with classic galactosemia who start the speech and language treatment before age 6 months. The treatment ends at 24 months, and there's follow-up assessments at 30, 42, and 54 months. Another group starts a motor treatment from the earliest age, then switches to speech and language treatment at age 15 months, and then the same schedule of follow-up assessments at 30, 42, and 54 months. We have a group of toddlers and preschoolers with classic galactosemia who are already too old for the intervention, and they provide follow-up assessments at 30, 42, and 54 months. And we have typical controls who give us data throughout their first 2 years of life, and then they also do the follow-up assessments. Babble skills. On the left, you see a scatter plot of Babble complexity as measured with the mean babbling level as a function of age. And the children connected with the red lines are the children in our treatment group. In green is typical controls, and in blue are children who are not yet getting the speech and language treatment. They will start getting that at 15 months. To simplify, on the right, we have just whisker plots. And we see here that the children in the treatment group, 19 of them, have far higher babbling sophistication compared to even typical children, and certainly children with classic galactosemia who have not yet been treated. And this is for ages 10 to 12 months, 10 through 12 months. Follow-up testing of speech articulation skills shows that the Goldman-Fristow test of articulation standard scores for the children, here represented in green, who have had our intervention, are almost all within typical levels, indicated here with the dashed line at standard score 78, which is minus 1.5 standard deviation. The children with the blue triangles represent children with classic galactosemia who did not receive our treatment, who received standard of care, and 2 of them are clearly below that clinical cutoff. Similar patterns for expressive language skills, also at the 3 time points at follow-up in green. All children had typical scores at the 3 time points for which we have data available. And 1 child with classic galactosemia who did not receive, or 2 actually, who did not receive our intervention were below these cutoffs. Receptive language is going well for everyone. So speech, sound production, and expressive language is where it's at, mostly for children with classic galactosemia. Did all the work on Babble pay off? We think it might. The correlation coefficient for mean babbling levels at ages 10 through 12 months is correlated with the speech articulation scores at follow-up at nearly approached statistical significance, and we expect as our database grows that this association will turn out to be more robust even. Here is a surprise. First pilot results of IQ at age 54 months. On the left, you see children with classic galactosemia who have participated in our treatment. On the right, you see 2 control children. And if you look at the standard scores from the IQ test for verbal IQ, you will see that all treated children had higher verbal IQ scores compared to the untreated children with classic galactosemia. Nonverbal IQ is not as clear, but certainly the verbal IQ is. Next steps are to complete the classic galactosemia study. If we can provide conclusive evidence, this will trigger a cost-benefit analysis and hopefully a change in best practice so that all children with classic galactosemia can receive proactive care instead of deficit-based reactive care. We're already piloting the Babble bootcamp in infants born preterm, and we're now starting a cohort of infants with Down syndrome. I'd like to acknowledge our wonderful families who have participated in the study. And we have the NIH and Arizona State University to thank for financial support, and many, many thanks to our wonderful colleagues and students and collaborators. Thank you very much.